I'm Claire Edwards, and you're listening to Authentic Leadership, a series of conversations, insights, and inspirations with leaders who are real, raw, and authentic. Today, I bring you a conversation focused on intentional leadership with Gunnar Habitz, Senior Partner and Alliance Manager Asia Pacific at Hootsuite, and eternal creative entrepreneur. Gunnar's a great storyteller and kicks off our conversation sharing how he made the decision to come to Australia from Switzerland and his deliberate move to engage in formal leadership training with the Australian Institute of Management and now as a chartered manager through the Institute of Managers and Leaders. If you're developing yourself or others on that journey from accidental manager to intentional leader, then you'll find this conversation jam-packed with nuggets of learning and roadmaps for decision-making. Enjoy your time with Gunnar. I first met Gunnar Habitz when I was speaking on the topic of the brain and habits. And Mr. Habitz was on the speaking bill too, so as you can imagine, we hit it off immediately with our habits in common. Gunnar is a man of many talents, working as a senior partner and alliance manager for Asia Pacific at Hootsuite. And the inner entrepreneur never being far away, he continues to offer professional development initiatives that serve his passion for matching people with technology to thrive and prosper. Gunnar lives in Sydney, Australia, and how he came to settle here is a story worth listening to in itself. Today, we're going to be talking about the concept, practice, and philosophy of intentional leadership. Gunnar, welcome to Authentic Leadership.
Hello, Claire. Good to be here.
Yeah, it is. It's taken a while for us and we got there in the end. So, Gunnar, before we delve into our topic of intentional leadership today, I'm curious to explore this journey that you took, both physically and mentally and emotionally, to arrive in Sydney from Switzerland some 4 years ago. So can you sort of roll back the clock 4 years and tell us a little bit about how you ended up here?
Happy to do this. So funny enough, I ended up here, first of all, by cruise ship. So that was the best way how to arrive in a city. When you arrive in Circular Quay and early in the morning to see how Sydney is waking up, passing through the harbor and see the Sydney Opera House. That is one of maybe the best entrances you can have in a city, like New York, or maybe even a little bit better. But that was only my very first impression. There was no intention at that time to ever move to Sydney at all. So then taking back the time, I've been working for 16 and a half years at the same company in Switzerland. I had a great career over there in the IT, developed myself from consultancy into channel, into sales management. But for a corporate reason, one moment I got the chance to do something else, so to say, because some management positions were taken out. And I took it rather as a chance for a change and considered what else in life would be there. And then I realized as well that it's good to have a kind of a break, like a sabbatical, as we call it today. But also I've seen that I didn't have any formal leadership training. I only have been managing people. And therefore I thought there might be a good place for this. And instead of going to St. Gallen in Switzerland, which would be the best way to study that back home, I thought there might be another place as well. We traveled 3 months across New Zealand, including 1 week in Australia, coming here to Sydney. And I realized that not only Sydney or Australia is a place of great education system, but also that there is no better place on the planet, maybe, for people who are in the software industry like myself. There's so many companies being here active. That's great. The density can never be higher anywhere else. So I thought about, why not to come here to Sydney for a trial? So I studied at the Australian Institute of Management for 2 months in 2016. And then I really fell in love with the city, with the diversity of the suburb, of the cultures, and with the marketplace here. And I thought there is a place for me.
So it's a big decision. You're coming to the other side of the world. So it was a deliberate step in your leadership career.
Indeed, because I thought why should I do the same of the same over and over again? To be in the hamster wheel of one company to do a similar one in the same place. And I thought there might be something else in life. So I put a list of 7 cities where I could potentially be interested in moving to. Sydney was on number 8, but Sydney made it.
And so, in terms of 8 jumping up the ladder to number 1, was it the things that you've just mentioned around the culture and the opportunities for IT based work?
I think it has a lot to do with this beautiful location that Sydney has here in
Mm,
Australia. So that, of course, is something what I like. I'm a big fan of historical cities, and in Australia, this of course is very historical. All of these older buildings, which are well kept, that I like a lot. The a big portion was related to the people in Australia. And also in Sydney
mm,
is particularly much easier to get in contact, not only from expat to expat, but rather with those who are living here in the first, second, third, fifth, seventh, 10th generation, and to
yeah.
feel more integrated instead of just accepted. It's much
So,
better
Gunnar, when
here
you
to get into networking as well compared to back in Europe.
Yeah, that was actually the question I was going to ask because I'm assuming, having chosen Sydney, it wasn't as if you had a huge network of family and friends to integrate into. How many people did you know when you arrived here?
Actually, two, independent from each other, and both are living in Melbourne, maybe 10 kilometers from each other, without knowing each other. So these are the only two people who I knew.
Wow.
Maybe,
Okay,
yeah.
so tell me about then how did you start to grow your network and what work opportunities did you find?
So, in terms of the network, the beauty is when you start do a leadership training of a very practical institute like the Australian Institute of Management. There are people from all walks of life, not only from the same type of companies, from larger, from smaller companies, from government,
Mm,
from public. So that gave me a good understanding how the people operating in their workplace, how it is to work there, how it is to live there. Then I had
yeah.
the chance to also, instead of renting an apartment for 2 months, I thought better is to keep the momentum of being on the trip, on the journey. So I've been in 12 different Airbnbs and hostels and different type of accommodations that at least I had an understanding about the diversity, how it's to talk to the landlord, how it is to live in a very old unrenovated terrace house or in a high-rise building in Kirribilli when there is vivid to see the best view. And I really understood the how different all of the suburbs are. And then I had the chance to talk to many of them. I've
Hmm.
I've done deliberate decision also to join some meetup groups and even internations, which is a well-known expert network, which has lots of events ongoing where people from who are coming new to a country can meet others. Where on internation it's more the expats, where on meetup it's more many locals as well. And
Yeah.
I really found the nice place to not tell everyone, hey, I need a job, but rather listen to their stories and maybe adding some kind of questions and comments how I can help them with a little bit of my life experience that I have and connect the dots and provide some help instead of doing anything else. And that was exactly the key moment to get into very good discussion with them. And they, of course, have been quite curious how it can be that somebody from Switzerland has interest in going to Australia.
Yeah. So you've got a good conversation starter, but also I know from the times that we've met and the conversations that we've had, this is one of your core values and your core philosophies around listen to people, listen to their stories, see how you can add value. And that's your way of influencing, of building rapport. And at the end of it, often business will result. Is that right? That's I suppose, your philosophy around selling is giving.
Yeah, exactly. I call it, in that sense, active listening. And I always say, even curiosity is a very good driver for leadership. It's a great driver for a salesperson because it's not just to try to pitch, even on networking events, to tell, I am do this, I am that, buy me, but
Mm,
rather to learn about the other person. Particularly when you come new to a place, curiosity is the best driver. Not wanting anything in return immediately, believe in the giver's gain mentality, and
yeah.
one day it will help. And it did help.
I, I, I couldn't agree more with you. I think to be genuinely interested in someone rather than trying to be interesting is the greatest attitude that you can adopt in terms of building relationships. And I just want to go back to the decision. So you did your leadership training with the Australian Institute of Management, and the title of this podcast is The Intentional Leader. And I think we're both acutely aware, Gunnar, of so many people who are technical experts, subject matter experts who are promoted into management and leadership positions, but without being given the skills, the tools, the competencies, the attributes to do the job. And this isn't in the list of questions that I sent you, so I hope I'm not putting you on the spot. But going back to your job in Switzerland when you were leading and managing people, what were some of the maybe mistakes or traps that you fell into because you were more of that accidental leader than intentional leader at that time?
Yeah, that is true. So then when I've been in that company, I started as a consultant by myself. I've been a product manager for 7 years. I stepped the career ladder based on individual contributor position, doing myself, become an expert in that field. Exactly this, as you mentioned, this technical expert, so to say. And then I got the chance to lead a sales team across the European region of Central Eastern Europe, which was about 32 people across 29 countries. So
that's a big team.
It's a big starting point. And most of them I had to manage in a virtual way. So remotely, there was not too much about Zoom or something like this in 2011, but at least I had the chance of visiting them. And as I've been more senior than most of my team members, I went through some of their challenges already beforehand, but I tried not to be the one who told them, I've done it this way, you must do that same way, but rather to try to adopt my learning from an earlier time when Switzerland went to the maturity ladder of these type of product categories, and adopting it then when the other countries, like in my case was Czech Republic, Poland, Russia, Ukraine, Kazakhstan, and so on, when those people had the same maturity level that Switzerland maybe some years earlier, so I could adopt some of my learning and experience with the challenges of the team today and to come collaboratively to a good decision or conclusion how to go after this one. But indeed, it was an accidental management role. Had some internal management trainings and over there, but it took a while until I really came into this intentional leadership, which is it's a different approach compared to just being promoted as a manager without any kind of intention behind that.
Great. So what were some of the sort of main aha moments or key learnings from you? Because you immersed yourself in this leadership training. What were some of the major things that you got out of it that you're able to still use today with your teams?
You mean out of my initial management experience or later out of the trainings?
Out of the training, yeah.
So the interesting thing at the Australian Institute of Management was the fact that there were people from all over, and the whole curriculum was built out of different type of areas, being it people management, risk management, business management, a lot of different type of functions which are necessary for this advanced diploma. What I got out of this was, in particular, as it has been delivered face-to-face, not just online, because that you can do from everywhere, but the reflection and discussion together with the facilitators, which have been very outstanding and well chosen by the Institute, because they're really practitioners and well regarded in their field instead of just a teacher type of person. So that was one side, the exchange with the facilitators, who I'm still well connected to with most of them, although it's 4 years ago. And also the reflection in talking to the other participants, how they would adopt some of the learning in their workplace. So that was for me that an aha moment in taking my curiosity approach, knowing I will not end up in the same type of company as beforehand. Particularly, I moved then later to a much smaller company, more humble, where not all of the resources would exist. So that was for me a good learning during these training times. And even I got the chance from the Institute to adopt the work that I had to do, the assessments, based on either the new workplace or even the older one, as long as not longer ago than 1 year before commencing the study, so that I could do a reflection on both sides by both sides
Oh,
of it. And that was a very good one.
that's interesting. So can you remember some of the work that you did on reflection from when you were working in Switzerland and some of the key learnings that came out of that?
I think two of these major long pieces in this leadership training was around, one of them was about business management, the other one was about people management. So both I've done reflectively about the time in Europe. The business relationship in particular, business management, because I've been managing a business unit, so to say, that I had my own profit and loss and had to really plan the business from a half year, from a quarterly perspective, to drill down the quota into the countries, to really drive it as my own business. So there's that part of leadership behind, which of course starts with the reverse engineering. What do I need to do in order to achieve that number at the end? And so on. There was a lot of this corporate culture behind, what I still can use today, which is a good one. The other one was on the people management side, which I take a bit more into leadership than just management. I don't like too much about this black and white, say that managers are rather not the nice side of seeing it, and leadership is the proper one, because we are managing tools and we are leading people. But these black and white pictures give us some kind of direction, so to say. The people leadership part I enjoyed in Europe because I had this huge amount of virtual leadership where I didn't see my team members on a daily basis, not at all. They were in completely different countries. But then sometimes didn't even know where I've been. Sometimes I popped up in a country without them, all of them being totally aware of this one. That is a beauty when you travel 90 nights a year in a hotel. Not these days. But at least it was a good chance also to develop the people further. And what my big learning was, when you go in an area like also in Asia Pacific, where you have different maturity level of country development, but also of people, then you cannot expect necessarily that everyone is at the same space, at the same type of development stage. So then when I went, for example, the first time to Poland, where I thought was rather mature, but in many areas it has not necessarily been. So then I had to more mentor than coach them. So better give them answers instead of asking the right questions. And that was a good learning for me. And they really wanted to know, how have you done this in the same situation a couple of years back? And was for me a learning to not simply say this, but rather try to adopt it into the current state, because you can never compare what worked in the very past to adopt it to today. And the year 2020 tells us this exactly.
Yeah, no, that's and I really like that distinction that you make around you manage tools and you lead people. I've had a similar reaction to sort of, management is just looking at the detail and making sure all the processes and the systems are in place. And I think that's an old paradigm. I think that goes back to sort of the 80s command and control style management. And would you agree? I think we've moved on from that now.
But one sentence here. Often this is in blog posts associated with the leadership, the good one, the management, rather the bad one. As a good leader, in particular as a servant leader, it is my job to manage the tools that I can lead my people. So it always has a management component and a leadership component inside.
Yeah. Yeah, I hear you. And
so I need to make sure that my team has everything available to be successful.
Absolutely. And so I'm going to jump back again, because I realized that I asked you a question and you gave me a great answer, but it wasn't the answer I was looking for. I wanted to know.
Welcome to politics.
When you were back in Switzerland, when you were still in your sort of accidental manager, accidental leader position, was this, a mistake that you made or a way that you worked that wasn't as effective as it could have been had you had that leadership and management training?
Yes, I know where you come from, and indeed we didn't cover that one. So there were surely situations where when I take myself as a visionary and participative leader, which are more mild-sized compared to the directive ones, where
Yeah.
then maybe the European head office wanted me to more drill down and simply force the team to do things where I knew the results would not come anyway. So I wanted to always get in kind of an exception because I've been in the more emerging region instead of the more mature region. So always raised flagged exceptions of this one, which have not been always granted, which is of course a mistake, or let's say a challenge, so to say. And based on this, the learning for me was when you act as a servant leader, you take a lot on your own shoulders. And that for me was a big learning to not always allow this. But in that sense, when you manage a region of countries and you have some senior managers above you, you're sitting basically in a sandwich. And the question for me was, how can I handle this, not to run into a burnout, but at the same time to be clear what is possible, what is not possible. And at that time, I wish I had better type of, let's say, the theoretical knowledge and the praxis from some who went through the same kind of challenges instead of trying to do everything to please everyone, which of course doesn't work at the time. Instead of simply saying, we will not do this. I believe in more in the leadership part of allowing the team to do what they believe what's right when we agree on this one from a mid and long term, instead of simply only saying, now we must close the number for this quarter and therefore we change everything. And after 2 weeks, we go back to the mode that we have been beforehand.
Yeah. I hear you.
And I wanted to make sure that this pressure of politics is not landing on the shoulders of my team, because they are the ones, particularly in sales, they're the ones who are selling.
So did you had to shield them from the politics?
I kept as a filter to motivate downstream, but not too much press downstream. Rather encourage, enable, and not simply press down.
Thank you. So tell me a little bit about. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, I wanted them to understand why it makes sense to go a certain way, and I never wanted them to say, Gunnar, because you are my boss, I do it.
Yeah. I think, the why is probably the most important word or question in leadership, where sometimes when we have the pressure to deliver, sometimes we forget to offer the why or to have the curiosity and inquire about the why. And all the focus is on, this is what needs to be done, this is how we need to do it. But without understanding the why, we're not helping develop that internal motivation for people to do it. I love that. I love that quote from Friedrich Nietzsche, which is, he who has a why to live can bear almost anyhow.
Yeah. So my point here is often this topic of why, particularly in books like Start With Why from Simon Sinek, it's very often talking about the leader. What's the why of a leader? But for me as a leader, I'm so curious to find out the why of my team members, why they are there, why are they in, for example, in sales, as in my case, what is their view where they would like to go after, and what's all the background. If I better understand their why, and every member is different, I can better address and can lead better. It's not just the why of the leader.
Absolutely. I fully agree. And again, you've piqued my curiosity at leading such a diverse team, a large team, a diverse team, leading virtually. How did you bring them together for a collective why? I mean, that's a big job.
It is a big job, in particular when for the product categories that we've been going after, in none of the countries we have been a number one. But there was sometimes a number two, a number three, but there was a target to get us higher. So then I developed a collective strategy, collective why, how we can be the leader in that sense in that particular region, country by country, and made them also understand that some countries who thought, oh, we are only number 4 anyway. I said, no, you might be a smaller country, but it's even more critical that you play your role as well and see yourself growing in this area, because I connected it this number game to get some numbers, not by only by salary and commission, but also what it means for them and their career later when they can prove that they have the chance to grow as a person, not just grow as results. And I combined this all together.
Oh,
And also,
that's such an important. I just want to emphasize that is such an important point where you measure progress, you measure growth, and it's not all results oriented. Sorry, carry on.
yeah, and if you see from a planning point of view, very often companies are looking into this quarter and the next quarter. And particularly when you look in sales here in Australia, in IT sales, very often we hear that people are moving on every 15 or 18 months and find another job in another company. I rather took the approach of how can I develop them further? How can I give them the chance from a junior sales to a senior sales over time to make rather a long-term planning with them to address a couple of options which are possible. And as a result of this, to create a pathway into this one, which also can include adding some kind of incremental tasks or roles. That's how I got into sales. I've been only on as a consultant, then into product, but then I got the chance to develop 3 accounts, and I sold and succeeded in all of them to sold them products. I realized this quota of 100% of every customer I got to sell to them, I will never be able to stick to this in life, but at least it was a good door opener that is possible. And I wanted to give this to my team members as well. And to your question, how I brought them together, I brought them indeed together from all of those countries 3 times that we all met together. And that was a great stuff as well.
So three times a year or 3 times in total?
Every year once. We met one was in Czech Republic. There was a factory to visit this all together. And when you see as a salesperson how much labor is behind creating a product and shipping this, then you don't think about discounting so much because you see the effort of the workers to make that happen. That was my message.
That's
and for the second one,
point.
yeah, that was really on purpose to do the guided tour over there as well. And for the second one, I brought them all to an outsourced center in Romania, where there was 4,000 people from the company who have all these centralized functions, which in Asia Pacific you very often have in countries like in Philippines, where normally you think that's an email address, but they are well-educated people who unfortunately never have the chance to travel to the country. So then I thought, then when they can't come to us, we go to them. So then I took the whole team. We have about, with everything together, maybe about 30, 35 people. And we went then there, which for some countries meant a longer trip in changing flights. But it was really worth the effort because then we got a better understanding about those outsourced functions, the human beings behind the progression that they do.
Yeah.
And they've done an extra effort for us because we built a relationship with them. And we didn't treat them as a function, but as true colleagues where everyone has a shared part of the total work to be done.
Yeah. They're still part of the tribe. And I would imagine that sense of appreciation increased in your team of all the cogs that form the greater machine, so to speak, and how it all works in the end, and understanding each of those little pieces and how they form the greater whole.
Indeed, it was really grouping the people together, and I totally enjoyed that. And to show them, our team, and also the outsourced colleagues over there, that we're all sitting in the same boat. So some of my central function, myself and my direct reports who are at central roles, we together have been even acting something. So then I went to a studio to record a song. It was Go West from the Pet Shop Boys. I wrote the lyrics and called it Go East. And we have done some photo collage of this one. And that's what I showed them there at that location with all together 70 people in the room. I cannot sing, I've proven this, but trying and doing the effort in there really paid off.
Oh, well, I absolutely take my hat off to you because I can't sing, and it's one thing that I still need to pluck up the courage to do in front of people, just to say that to say that I did it. So I admire you for that, Gunnar. Absolutely. So going back to the theme of intentional leadership, that's why I was really keen to be in conversation with you today, because I know it's something that's really important to you, and you've been through that journey from sort of accidental manager and leader to intentional leader. So what if I say the word intentional leadership, what does that mean for you, Gunnar?
So for me, it means particularly the move from my interest in products and processes into people. And
Right.
that was something that I developed over the time when I have been a manager, that I really would like to get more and develop my team members further. And partially, if even when it means when I didn't have anything as an ideal job, that partially even outside of the company, but ensure and see them growing. That was more my interest instead of just the market share growth or revenue numbers. So then that's when I realized it's more intention there to develop others, to give back to the community and to the marketplace, and that's when then the intention came in.
Ah. And in terms of like an organization's culture, can you see that a culture of intentional leadership exists? How would you know it exists?
If you look into an organization from outside, then you can see and simply find out how long are people there, particularly how long are non-managers there, if they go away very fast, or if they would like to stay and develop themselves further, because that normally requires also that their managers or leaders see it in the same way. So that is one external view how to find that out. When you're inside of a company, then you realize, of course, if the boss has interest to develop something further, not only because there is a duty to have a career discussion by a formality, but also you feel when the boss really would like and would like to encourage you in going that way. So I had this myself. Many years back, before I had my management role, my boss, she actually mentioned, Gunnar, it's time for you. I see what you can do, that you have interest in developing not just products, but also people further. But for me, it was too early, because the position that was associated with it had the most boring products I could ever imagine. So then it was nice to be with people, but when you're around and represent a product category in the market, in the country, than to get from something very sexy and modern into something boring and old fashioned, only because the chance of getting into a management role. I didn't realize at that point yet that I should have maybe done that, but everything comes for a good reason. So therefore, then later I had
Absolutely.
the chance to get further on that.
So what I'm hearing is that a culture of intentional leadership is where there's an absolute proactive approach to develop a learning organization, to develop people to see, to help, to guide, to facilitate their progress, as well as, of course, all the other strategic analytical operations. But you can see that, what when you said that active encouragement of people, and so where you are now at Hootsuite, how would you describe the culture of Hootsuite? And I don't even know if because you've only recently joined Hootsuite, so I don't know how much opportunity you've had to be in the offices, because we're still working from home through the pandemic.
Indeed, we are still working from home. So I remember I've seen the office during interview stage, but that was the only official moment to really see this, not having a badge for that yet. But Hootsuite is particular one organization where culture is a very important point, and you feel this not just by watching in the checkpoint that I've done earlier, that people are progressing inside the organization. That became now, of course, even more obvious for me to see. But it's also in a way how the whole organization everywhere is interested in developing people and be together, achieve something together, because that becomes valid and relevant then when a situation like an onboarding process has to be now delivered completely out of the home office. And the effort which is there from all the team members, not only my manager, but from everyone, how the 3 new starters, I've been only one of 3, how we can progress and to be as fast as possible at a good state that we can run ourselves. There you see the team effort, and that is part of the culture, and that's what I liked a lot.
Wow, and that's testament to a strong, healthy culture where you feel that, and you haven't even spent time physically with people since you started.
Yes, basically we see ourselves just in front of the screen, but we do a lot of screen sharing. So that's good, and it builds trust to develop something together. We use all of the modern tools which are there for collaboration, and that, of course, shows the effort.
So, Gunnar, just thinking about this and the whole sort of aspect of, I think the program that the Institute of Managers and Leaders runs is From Accidental Manager to Intentional Leader, and I'm not asking you for a solution, an answer. I think there's a bigger problem. But we still seem to be making the same mistakes in business, where subject matter experts, technical experts are recruited into people management positions, and these people really struggle. What's your perspective on this? What's your view on this?
So I witnessed this as well all over my career, that people are promoted because they are great in their part, what they are doing. So, and if you can take it from a sports point of view, a great football player doesn't need to be a great coach. Some of the best
Yeah,
coaches in the world, they have been rather average players. It's different type of skill set. So therefore, if you take from a typical sales point of view, the traditional lonely wolf salesperson or the traditional stereotype used car salesman, they might not have the right leadership skills in their DNA, but they might be high achievers by themselves. So therefore, if those people are moved into a leadership position, it is for me also often a leadership mistake from their superiors. You cannot necessarily make this without analyzing what type of team they would need to take over. So better when you announce that some person will take over, to address a coaching program before they start and accompany this for another 3 to 6 months to ensure that they can develop themselves quickly enough to add this servant leadership style instead of the egoistic
yeah,
own sales approach. So that for me is a critical one. When that is not done well, then the new team, so to say, or the team which is taken over by that person might not accept the leader well enough, in
yeah.
particular not when the chosen person has been part of the same collection of peers.
Mhm. Gunnar, I think that's such an important point that you just made, because what I'm hearing from you is to say, let's give these people a chance, but we coach them in advance and we give them every opportunity to succeed. And maybe still then, if it's not for them, if it's something that they don't feel right with, then we haven't lost a good person in the organization. There's still another way that they can go. Is that what you were sharing? Because I think it's it's a really important point.
It is an important point, particularly if you take someone who's exceptionally well in their own part, is then thrown into the water of a management position, and if it doesn't work, you lose too. You lose the young manager, so to say, but you also lose the former individual contributor, because that person might not be able to get back into where it has been beforehand. So therefore, the process of getting someone up to a management position of people responsibility is important to make that proper. And there's enough of reasons why this can be stuck, because someone is maybe leaving the company, a leader is gone, and someone else need to be immediately chosen for this one. But one way of seeing, of course, where you have talented people who might be able to lead a team, there are some functions beforehand. Somebody can get extra assignments. Somebody can have some
Yeah.
kind of more project-related leadership tests, or maybe they can be encouraged also to lead in a volunteering type of organization as well, to develop these critical skills that might be a part of a development plan as well, that is very often underestimated.
I think, yeah, that's really important. So we're creating pathways for people. We're creating pathways to success. We're not setting them up to fail.
And I've seen this particular when we went to this mentioned outsourcing center in Romania. You could see who of them is individual contributor and who of them is a team lead before they become a manager. You can really see there was a quite well designed process in place to choose the right people, to develop them before they are official managers, but to give them responsibility, to let them get their first steps in this role of managing team without being officially their boss, and then let them go further. That was developed very, very well.
That's brilliant. So you as their leader, you're constantly observing, you're looking out for traits, leadership traits and attributes that they demonstrate, and then you can help foster that to grow them and develop them into that leadership position.
Yeah, for me, that's very critical. As a leader, we need to also get the people below, so to say, below us, to develop them up as well. One day, we might not be in our position as well. We need to ensure that we have not just a backup for holidays, but to ensure that the system is still working when the leader is not there for a day or two or a year or whatever.
Yeah, I hear you. No,
and that is so that is a big difference compared to in the past, when then the manager thought when he or she is not there, nothing is working anymore. To prove the necessity of them being there, but exactly the opposite is the case. It should run smooth without them.
That was ego based, and it was fear based as well. So, my job is to make myself indispensable, when in reality, the better approach would be to make yourself redundant, because you've created such a capable team around you.
Indeed. And I looked into what I learned also at the Institute of Managers and Leaders, and I continued there my journey, also became a chartered manager. And then I looked into, when I really take this whole, the concept of intentional leader, as it's starting with an I started to describe what's important for me in a leader with 7 words, all starting with an I. And that's what I actually wrote in one story called From Accidental Manager to Intentional Leader. And that was interesting to see, that to really reflect on the journey, which is part of the assessment in the Chartered Manager side. And I put 7 words with I, let me tell them. Impact, influence, inspiration, improve, instruction, interest, because curiosity starts with a C, so I will put interest over there. And the last one is imperfection, which sounds strange with the other words, but it shows me it's an ongoing journey. It will never be perfect.
I love that. I'll make sure, if that's okay with you, to put those in the show notes at the end, because I think it's a great philosophy. Thank you. Now I'm going to change tack slightly. I'm realizing we haven't got too much time, but I'm really enjoying this conversation. So towards the end of last year, you were featured as a contributor in the business book Lessons I Learned. What would you tell your younger self? I want to know, what would you tell your younger self?
So this book, Lessons I Learned, has my story, which I call From Laid Off to Paid Off, which actually talks about the story from taking a workforce redundancy as a chance for a change towards a better self. Instead of me going back to another similar company in Switzerland to do something very similar, I thought there must be a good chance to progress further. And sometimes it happens in our careers that there's a chance where you can really pivot and get a couple of steps higher at once. And even it can come to times when it goes down at the first time. So when you go into a typical change curve, that you first need to really accept that there is an issue. And until you're really getting out of this one, it might take a while. And that is exactly what I've been doing until I came to Australia and I landed here. So I described this a little bit on my own journey, in particular how I found then my network over here, and how I became, let's say, how I completed my journey from shy introvert as I was born into a strategic networker, a bit more on the extrovert side. And I put this also into 7 letters in this book, and I can simply tell these letters. So at first, I thought in this journey was welcome to reality. So that's where the R comes from. To get a kind of a trigger event from outside, which in my case was a workforce redundancy, and my learning was not I was made redundant, the job was made redundant. So that's a big
Yes.
difference. Then the next time when this happens, and these times, unfortunately, it happens to many given the economic downturn that we face these days. So then I thought, okay, let's take some time off. So I take the O. And the third one, I check the alternatives, the A. Should I go back to another hamster wheel next to the one where I've been? Or could I become my own coach or consultant or whatever I would like to do? Normally, when people are employed for a long time, they never think about really alternatives, viable alternatives.
Yeah.
And then I thought to do a deep dive into myself. That's a D, because to really reflect on and put a gap analysis where I've been, what's missing. That's how I came on really this idea of leadership program. Number 5, invest in your mastery, which is the letter M. Talks about exactly how I've done this program at the Australian Institute of Management. Number 6 is action to get back on track, because finally, with this huge excitement of the marketplace over here, it took me a bit, but then I found my role in a company who really would like to get me, including sponsorship visa. So that was perfect. And number 7, welcome back in the paid world. So that's how that then started to move over. And all these 7 letters, they are together called a roadmap, which shows me when you are in such kind of a situation, which was my work redundancy, it's not just a journey, because the journey normally you explore without knowing where you go. But when you take it as a roadmap, it's like more a kind of a plan where you have a target, where you like to go somewhere. And that's how I took the change curve.
Got career coaching in 7 words.
So to say, yes. So that is a book what I actually, and I actually started writing this book called Chance for Change, but it's not ready yet. And an extract of this was in this book, Lessons I Learned.
Fantastic. I will. I'll definitely put a link to the book in the show notes. And I love it's so catchy as well, from laid off to paid off. I think there are so many people who could get a lot of hope, and especially if they're in the dip of that change curve, as you mentioned, that just through listening to this and listening to your own journey and your own advice that you took, to be able to follow that roadmap, I think is practical and extremely helpful, Gunnar. Thank you. So
thank you. And so to add something on this, it can happen that at the end of the roadmap, you're ending somewhere completely different where you initially thought that you will be, but you learn so much on the progress. So therefore, I call it rather how to turn redundancy into a sustainable advantage.
Yeah, absolutely. Wow. So, sort of rounding up our conversation, and I tend to always ask the first question and always ask the last question, and in between we just go on a fabulous journey which we've done so today. And there's some really good golden nuggets that you've shared there around intentional leadership. But if there was one key message, Gunnar, that you could leave people who maybe the person listening to this podcast is the one who has been given that leadership responsibility but is struggling. Maybe they are the subject matter expert, the technical expert who has been offered this opportunity and thinks, gosh, this is a heavy weight on my shoulders. If there was one message you could leave our listeners with around intentional leadership, what might that be?
So my message here is to really shape this intention, is to develop your own curiosity in other people, the pleasure of seeing them succeed and grow. And even if they grow higher than yourself, it doesn't matter, but you can develop them. And this is for me a very critical thing. That makes a difference also from a manager to a leader. The desire to see people growing. And that only starts with curiosity, active listening to ensure to do the best for the team, because they will pay back this to you as well.
Yeah, I love that. That's the perfect wrap up that you've done for us, Gunnar. Is it okay if I put your LinkedIn connection on the show notes as well for people to get in touch with you?
Yes, sure.
Fantastic. And I'll also put your Gunnar Habitz website as well. As I said in the beginning, you do this fabulous work at Hootsuite, and you're still an active entrepreneur. Gunnar, I've thoroughly enjoyed this conversation. I think it's practical, it's insightful. Your stories have been great to share. Thank you so much for your time. It was absolutely worth waiting for. Go well, continue to do this great work in intentional leadership. And thanks again.
Thanks very much for the chance to joining your podcast. Really enjoy that.